Hello, everybody. It's great to see like the chat already lively before we even got started today. So I'm really excited that you all are here. And I did the amateur thing. Oh my God. Give me 1 second. I did the total amateur thing and I had the YouTube open on a different tab somewhere. And so I'm like hearing my echo. See, and now you're all supposed to listen to me talk about DevRel, and I'd like, here I am being a total amateur.
I feel like that's part of that's part of DevRel though, is like you are learning in public on the go. Like if we wanted perfectly done things, go hire a product marketer.
Exactly. Although now I'm part of developer marketing team, although my title hasn't changed. But anyway, doing quick introductions for those of you who don't know us. I am Brian Rinaldi. I'm a developer experience engineer at Launch Darkly, and my co-host is, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Erin Steeples. I'm a senior developer community advocate at Human Signal, which is the Label Studio project.
And today we are really excited to have Brittany Walker here as a guest. She's a senior developer advocate at Contentful. So thanks for coming out, Brittany.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys today.
So, so we wanted to talk to you specifically, like a little bit. We like to talk to everybody about how they got into DevRel, what they did before DevRel, things like that. So tell us a little bit about where you got your start. Like, were you a developer before and then kind of transitioned, or did you kind of move in a different direction?
Yeah, so my story is kind of long, but I will start in college. So I got a government degree, and I was really also into theater, and I worked a lot of events. So I was like a stage manager for South by Southwest. I volunteered at theaters being an usher. So I got to see so many free shows. It was awesome. So I was doing government degree, but I was also doing event stuff. And after college, I was like, I really want to work in events, but it's hard to make money. And it's also hard on your body because you work like all night and it's physical. So I decided, okay, let me get a job using my government degree a little bit, and theater will stay my hobby. So I got a job at a nonprofit association for cost estimation. Is really boring, but it's for government and contractor people. And I worked as a marketing assistant, sort of. And I did customer service. I planned conferences. So I kind of got to do events. We had 2 annual conferences. I helped plan those. But I was making like $35K. So it was like really low salary. There's only 4 of us, and only 2 of us were part-time, or 2 of us were full-time. So it was really small. So I was like, you know what, let me try to use my government degree and make some more money. So I switched to working at a law firm because I did want to become a lawyer at some point because I watched Law and Order and I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I was like, let me work at a law firm. So I got a job at this law firm doing practice management, which was a completely new thing at the time. But I got to still do a little bit events, planned meetings, and then it was set up where we had practice groups. So there'll be corporate lawyers, IP lawyers, energy, et cetera. And then people in my department would get assigned to like corporate and IP. And then we help them with recruiting, help them with marketing, help them with finances and stuff like that. So that's what I was doing. And I really liked it, but there was no way to move up in the job. Like I was a coordinator, and every practice group would have a director, manager, coordinator. And I couldn't be a manager unless somebody left or died. So by the time I left, they started adding senior coordinator and stuff like that. But I was like, I got to leave because I can't move up. So like, once again, I was like, I want to make more money and I want to move up a little bit. So I was thinking about leaving, but I couldn't really figure out how I wanted to leave. And Thanksgiving break in 2016, I decided to try to make a website because I wanted to make a site to track the musicals that I was watching. Because I like to go to New York. I live in DC. I like to take the train to New York, see shows. So I was doing that, and I couldn't remember all the shows that I that I had seen in the past. So I was like, let me make a site to track them. So I started trying to make a site. I knew a little bit of HTML and CSS from like 8th grade because I played Neopets, and I learned HTML and CSS from that. I had a little business making guild pages for people, and Neopets is really fun in 8th grade. And so Thanksgiving break, I was. Did you want to say something, Erin?
Oh no, I just got really excited only because I too was a Neopetter making all the cool. Of course, with the glitter. You gotta have the glitter gifts.
Exactly. Yep.
I'm too old for that stuff.
Yeah. And same with like Tumblr and MySpace pages. Yeah.
Yep. That's how I learned Photoshop and all that stuff. It's from 8th grade Neopets. And so I was like, okay, let me try to make a site. So I was trying to make a site and I was like, why are there dollar signs everywhere? And it was jQuery. And I was trying to make a site and it's really hard. And I was working on it in Thanksgiving break. And then January, I saw a meetup in DC that was like intro to jQuery, which is a very weird topic now, but it wasn't weird back then. And I was like, let me go to this meetup to figure out how to use jQuery. And I go to this meetup. And it was taught by this guy who was CEO of a coding bootcamp. So I did the meetup, and during the meetup, we were using like the console and dev tools to do stuff. And I was like, oh man, this is so hard. And looking back, it was not that hard, but I was like, this is so hard, but I kind of like it. So after the meetup, he's like, hey, if you want to do the bootcamp free trial, you can do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do free trial. So I signed up for the free trial. It was Thinkful, which is an online only bootcamp. Mm-hmm. And I decided to do in-person meetups in different cities to have in-person presence. So I happened to go to the first DC one just randomly by happenstance. So I started doing the free trial and they didn't have anything in the system to stop you. So I did like 1/3 of the boot camp for free. And then they were like, hey, you wanna pay now? And I was like, sure. So I started doing boot camp. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna sign up for this boot camp. And that's what I'm gonna do. And I did the boot camp while working full-time still at the law firm. And in the boot camp, you get assigned a mentor. And my mentor happened to be in DC and he was going to teach meetups for Thinkful in DC. So we teach intro to HTML, JavaScript, intro to CSS, how to build a website. And he's like, hey, after our mentorship sessions, if you come to the meetup, I can also help you with your projects. So I started going to the meetups. And then he's like, hey, they'll pay you to be a TA. And I was like, okay, I'll be a teaching assistant. So I just help people when he needs during his talks. And then one day, so I did this for a few months. I'm still doing the boot camp. It's like middle of 2017. And then he's like, hey, one time I go to one of the meetups, he's like, hey, I'm losing my voice. Can you teach tonight? And I was like, all right, I guess, because I seen him do the same one like 10 times. So I taught no notice intro to something and I really liked it. So after that, I taught every few months and he taught the rest of them. He was doing like 3 to 4 meetups a week, which is insane now that I think about it. And he didn't even live in DC, he lived in Maryland. So he had to commute to do it. So I was doing that, kept doing that. I liked doing the teaching. And then at the end of 2017, so I started the bootcamp in January. At the end of 2017, I got my first dev job at a digital agency. So I left the law firm. I told my boss, and she was like really surprised that I suddenly wanted to be a web developer. She's like, oh, okay. But I left. I started in January at a digital agency called Social Driver in DC. They made websites for nonprofits using WordPress and Drupal. I did not know WordPress or Drupal. I actually had never heard of Drupal before. And they just liked my portfolio. I had happened to make some projects. All my projects were about musicals. I happened to make a project that was a map of like, I was mapping the settings of musicals that won Tonys to see if there's a correlation between where the musical was set and if they won a Tony. And there is. If it's set in New York, it has a higher chance of winning a Tony. So I made that map and they happened to make a lot of maps for nonprofits. So they were like, we really like your map that you made. And I was like, okay, cool. So you can learn PHP on the job. And I was like, okay. So I started working at the agency and it was really fun. We made websites for nonprofits. I think I made like maybe 8 websites over my time there. But it was like really, we kind of worked in silos. So each developer would get a client and you build their site and then you work the next one. We didn't work together a lot. So I decided I also, again, wanted to make more money. And at the same time, I was still doing the teaching, the meetups with my mentor. And at the boot camp that I went to, one of the directors at the boot camp, she was a director of Women Who Code DC. And she was like, hey, you want to be in Women Who Code DC leadership since you've been doing these meetups with us? And I was like, sure. So I became part of Women Who Code DC leadership. We have like different teams. We have a data algorithms team, a front end team, professional development. So I was on the front end team and there are 5 of us. And we would do 2 to 3 workshops in DC for Women Who Code a month. So I was doing that. And then I decided I want to make more money again. So I applied to more jobs and I wanted to try a product engineering team because I really wanted to work with other developers more. So I ended up applying to a company, kind of like those companies where you put your resume and then the companies contact you. But the company I used doesn't exist anymore. So my next company, FrameBridge, which we make actual physical picture frames. So like that frame right there and that frame that I got for free because I work there. The VP of engineering contacted me and he's like, hey, you want to do an interview? here's our tech stacks, Ruby on Rails and Angular. And I was like, I don't know Ruby or Angular, but I was like, okay. So I talked to him and he's like, we're transitioning from Angular to Vue. And I had one Vue project that I made, again, a musicals project. And it was the one I originally tried to make at the beginning to track the shows I've seen. And he's like, you made this project in Vue, really like it, want to talk to you. So I was like, okay. So I applied there, I got the job. So I ended up working at FrameBridge. And we had 3 engineering teams, a website team, and then they have a team that works on factory code. So like we actually had a literal factory. And then my team was a retail team. So we worked on retail applications. And I worked on the retail team. We did stuff in Vue, and I was doing that. And then I was still doing the meetups. At this point, my mentor, he was like, hey, I'm going to travel the country in a van with my family. Do you want to take over the meetups? And I was like, okay. So I became the main instructor, and I had 2 TAs helping me. And this is only, now it was once a week, every Tuesday, instead of 3 times a week. And I taught anybody in DC could come. It was great. I loved doing those meetups. Anyone in DC could come. It was like intro to JavaScript, build a pet with JavaScript, build a game with JavaScript, all kinds of stuff. It was really fun. And I was doing Women Who Code as well, working at FrameBridge. And I liked working at FrameBridge. We pair programmed so much. It was great. But I really liked the teaching. And I started speaking at more DC meetups and making workshops. And I was like, man, I really like teaching people and making projects to help people learn. Like I made a workshop for Git and GitHub. At the time, all of the Git and GitHub tutorials, you like add your name to README. And I just was like, this is so boring. Like the README is like the one document that we update the least in my job. So like I wanted to do a workshop where we did something more fun. So I made a project called Emoji Screen, where there's these cards with emojis on it, and they match a TV, a movie, or a musical. And you try to guess which one it matches. And then people can add a card in the workshop. And then we look at the PRs together and people can see the whole process. And I really like doing all that stuff. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to apply to DevRel jobs. So I started applying to DevRel jobs and front-end jobs because I was scared I wasn't going to get a DevRel job. And I ended up at Contentful, which I had never heard of Contentful before. But I applied to Contentful and ended up working here. And that's the journey that I took to DevRel.
That was amazing.
I'm like, that's so cool. I'm also like geeking out of all your projects and stuff with like all the musicals and stuff. That's super. I love when people take like their passions and make them into fun technical things, especially like no boring data projects, like no boring projects. Make it fun, make it something you're interested in. I think that's a really cool thing. It also like the other thing I noticed is like you went from like government to like self-taught dev to like these really rad like projects, and it all came together like that front-end engineering was a fallback. Like I would be intimidated to apply to a front-end engineer job. Like I do not feel like I would be any good at it or any like, you know, like wild, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, that I think we talked a little bit before we got started, that like, you know, we've had a number of people on this show already, and everybody pretty much across the board came from like a non-traditional background. But I think yours was, you know, windier than most through like law and events, and yeah. So, and just the way you kind of managed to work your way into all these different positions is incredible. You know, I was lucky. Like, first of all, there was no Neopets when I was in 8th grade. I was in 8th grade coding, but I was coding on an Apple IIe. But yeah, so you know, I was just, I have had similar experiences in terms of like community management, in terms of how you got started with getting into local community stuff, which is kind of what brought me into DevRel as well, which kind of seems like, you know, your involvement in your meetups and Women Who Code and things like that was kind of what brought you towards DevRel. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, it was like I started running conferences for developers and doing like speaking, mostly because I was always driven by like what I couldn't do from work, right? Like, so like they wouldn't pay for me to go to a conference. Okay, so I'm going to make a conference instead, you know, or speak at conferences, even though like it wasn't something I really enjoyed. Or, you know, I got arrived in Boston when we moved, and I'm like excited to go to like a local meetup, and like it was dead, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start it then. That's just, but all that kind of drove me into DevRel. Was like that. I think local community involvement is kind of like a great place to build your skills as a DevRel person.
But that leads to another question. And I see Rizal or Black Girl Bites is in the chat here. So I'm like, if Rizal, this is for you, I'm like looking at you directly. Twitter kind of blew up this week of how technical does a DevRel need to be? And you've done the application process in a couple of different ways now and run meetups. I want to hear your take on this. Like, how technical should a DevRel be? Or should we reframe that conversation a little bit?
I think the way DevRel is now, you definitely have to have some technical background. But I also think the teaching part and the speaking to people part is hard to teach people. So like if you have that experience, it's really valuable. But I think it'd be really difficult without some kind of technical background, because at my current job, a lot of what I do is like sit in as the developer voice, and like somebody wants to make a feature for developers, then I will try it out and use it and tell them I think developers would like it like this. So it'd be hard to do that if you don't have any technical background. Yeah.
And I think like I'm gonna ping off of Maddie Two Shoes in the chat of like what does technical mean to you? Like I think that's a word that is really hard, amorphous, ambiguous to define.
True. I think maybe someone who has, I guess it depends on the product also for developer advocate, what product your company has. But for Contentful, we're a content management system. Someone who has worked as an engineer somewhere or developer for a website that has used content in some way, that was what we would consider technical for Contentful. Someone who's experienced an engineering team. So maybe product manager might be able to, if you have some knowledge, but it's really hard if you have no experience.
Yeah. I love the chat taking off of all the different definitions of technical, but I think like what you put your finger on mention how words today. But like defined it really much as like one thing that I personally, after this week and the whole blow up on Twitter, was like, I think we need to be better defining like what the heck what do you want? Like I'm at a place now where I'm doing a lot of data and Python and stuff, but like I don't work in Ruby. I don't know anything, but I knew Python before, but now I'm playing catch up learning infrastructure because that's important to machine learning. But it's a different, other places might be like, wow, Erin, we don't care about Python at all. So
yeah, I think there's definitely like a lot. I think Brittany's point that there are aspects of the job that are tough to teach, which is, like I've for instance, I've been on teams where we brought in deeply technical people who were well known, for say whatever language we were at the time. I think it was JavaScript front endy stuff, right? And they often found like they didn't really like the job because the job is a lot of not coding. They wanted to sit and code, and they thought like, okay, DevRel is going to be an opportunity to just kind of like experiment and build crazy things and just kind of build whatever I want. And I'm going to be coding all the time, and I might speak, but it's like, or write something, but that's the main thing is going to be building stuff. And it's like, well, okay. I've having had a bunch of these jobs over 12 years. It's not really ever the case. I don't know if for either of you. I mean, we build stuff, but like that's not the primary thing we're doing, right? So, so they even got frustrated with the job because the teaching and the writing and the speaking and those kind of things were really not their strengths. Their strength was in code, and so like you can be strong in code and not necessarily succeed in DevRel, in my opinion.
Yep, I definitely agree with that.
I think also the other thing that we kind of forget about DevRel is, y'all, we context switch probably how many million times a day? Like from, I look at my day yesterday and I'm like, okay, playing around with some of our new product features. And I'm like, first off, I'm like, what are our new product features? What problems are people going to have in 3 months or 6 months with these features? Or what's a demo that's going to stop, or a tutorial that's going to like help people understand these features? Then I'm switching to a metrics hour. Then I'm going to go switch and chase down support. Then I'm going to, it's like, I don't think I sat still it was something completely different every 30 minutes. Wildly.
Yeah. Which works, for some of us, right? Like that works for me too. I can't focus. Even if I tried, I couldn't focus on something for too long, but I context switch naturally.
Fully think if I had to work on one project, like that's a benefit for me. And I don't know how you work, Brittany, but it's very nice to be like, what times are you doing? But, I'm also curious, Brittany, like what does the typical day look like, or what missions and projects are you working on at Contentful right now?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about what DevRel is like at Contentful. So when I first started, so everybody that was in DevRel when I first started left, not for bad reasons. Like people got their dream job and stuff like that. So I'm like the only one left from when I started. So when I first started, it was like everybody could do whatever they wanted. So I wrote blog posts. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I first started. My old boss was like, "What do you want to focus on?" And I was like, "I don't know." So I did blog posts. I wrote the developer newsletter. I made videos. I spoke at events. Like I did all the possible things you could do as a dev advocate, and everybody on the team was doing that. And then now we have a new team, and now I've been here longer. We all kind of focus on an area. So he's really into written content, blogs, and podcasts. Another person on my team, he goes to speak at physical events. He's been to like 7 countries this year already. He also does more video stuff. And then I've been focusing on sponsoring events, like choosing events to sponsor, the booths and stuff like that, workshops, and like the stuff I mentioned where like an internal team wants to know something about what developers think. I've been doing a lot of that. So now it's a little bit more focused. But we basically are just like, I want to do videos. So my boss will be like, okay. And then we go decide how to make videos. So it's like really open. But right now we can kind of focus on a place that we are more interested in. And so a typical day for me is like all over the place. Like today I had a meeting with design because we want to do developer branding. So I was trying to explain to them what I wanted from them. And then I also am trying to pay some invoices for events. So I have to use our finance tool to figure out how to do that, which I still don't 100% get how to do the finances. I had to send a contract to legal for a conference. I have to start a draft for developer newsletter. And then I had like a marketing department meeting. So like, it's like all over the place as well, but not like in a bad way. I still like it, but it's definitely not, I'm not just making videos every single day. I'm doing like a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think that's my experience too. And I'd also say, like in my own experience at various DevRel teams, the ones that succeeded the best tended to do what your team has kind of gravitated to, which is we have enough people now. Like once we have a handful of people, we don't all need to do everything. Like, and having the same like goals for everybody, doesn't necessarily play into their strengths, because you tend to have somebody who prefers to speak and go to conferences, and then somebody like me, I'm more the right. I prefer to write. If you that's my thing. So the teams I've been at, like we all do a little bit of everything, but we gravitate towards some specialty, like I like writing or speaking or doing videos or whatever, like and it allows people to kind of thrive at it, what they're best at.
Meanwhile, there's people like me who are on basically a team of 2 people, 1 person, it's the manager and me
to do everything.
It's like conference talk, blog, or editing newsletter this morning. I did pull requests last night, correcting typos, like did some docs this week.
Yeah, that's like the I've had a couple jobs as like startups where like you get your head of DevRel, right, kind of thing. It's like head of DevRel for a team of me, and by the way, there's no marketing team or no, and so like I'm doing email campaigns and Twitter and so this all the social, and I'm doing like the docs and support and blog posts, and it's like, yeah, those are tough jobs.
Yeah. I've only ever I don't know what it would like to be on a larger team. I've never been on a larger team, so I'll let you guys know when I'm there. At least in the world of like developer community and DevRel. I'm curious to know like if y'all could drop one thing. Like if you were like, I never want to do this part of my job again, what would it be? Like what is the least favorite part of DevRel?
I would say making videos because it takes a long time. And I prefer doing live stuff, which is more nerve-wracking, but I don't know. I like doing live events. So I guess I would drop videos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm with you there, Brittany. It's mostly because, like, I feel like I'm a bit of a perfectionist on videos. Like, I don't mind doing live stuff like this, but like, you know, where I screw up and I put an echo of myself on the other tab, and it's fine, you know, whatever. I live with it. But like when you're doing like you know, pre-recorded videos, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I'd be 100% with you there. Although over the years, I've become less. I'm going to say this publicly and not like, hey, conference organizers, don't listen closely. But like, I'd become less enthused about public speaking. It's not that I hate it or anything. It's just like it's the travel and the prep, and it just feels like a lot of work for like one session. And I'll show up, and it's like, well, you never know where you get put, and then suddenly you're in a room, you know, it's like, oh, I'm at the end of the conference at 4:00 in the afternoon on Friday, and then there's like 5 people in the room, and I just spent weeks and prepping and time traveling and whatever, it's like
that's hard. Conferences have changed a lot. I mean, I'll out myself, and I mean, I was like, what would you just drop? So I'll put it out here. I'm over here like I would actually probably put more of the troubleshooting and support, like community and like community relations. Like, oh my goodness, we expanded our support team this week, and I am so happy. So happy. And that's not to say that I like don't like it, but I'm just like, man, I would rather go make a video. Video doesn't bother me. Speaking doesn't bother me, but I do agree. And I think like, you mentioned that you're sponsoring a lot of conferences, Brittany. I'm curious to get your take because like we've been doing, and I think Brian and I've talked about it on previous shows, conferences. They have totally changed. Like when you're sponsoring a conference, what do you look for in a DevRel conference from a developer perspective? Or like the question is like, I always hate being like, what value did the company get out of it? But at the end of the day, they do pay our paychecks. So
for developer conferences, I don't know what they're doing for the other marketing conferences, but for developer conferences, we are looking for just brand awareness right now. Because like I said, when I joined Contentful, I didn't know Contentful existed. And I was a CMS developer. So like, seems like I would have known about Contentful maybe when I was a WordPress dev, but I didn't. So we're just trying to do brand awareness. And then also for DevRel specifically, we have a social impact initiative where we're trying to sponsor like conferences to help underrepresented people in tech or early career people in tech. So like trying to get people to use this for their blog or portfolio when they're in college. So then later, maybe they're at a company that's like, what CMS should we use? And they could be like, oh, you could try, I use Contentful, why not? So that's kind of our focus. And so we look for conferences that are have diverse speakers, mostly JavaScript focused, because that's the main language people use with Contentful. And that's the main language that all of us know. So it'd be really hard for me to do a booth at like a Ruby conference because I have no idea what they're saying. But yeah, so that's pretty much what we're looking for. And then also conferences that we went to, we liked it. So that's also a criteria.
Yeah. It's been like we don't you're lucky you have that budget because we sort of had a little bit of that briefly, but it's gone away. Now everything's through marketing, and it's like, okay, I know what their goal is, and it's leads, end of story. So even maybe I get a talk, but the talk is often to drive people to the booth, kind of thing. So yeah, it is funny. I think the differing goals for a conference depending on where that budget comes from, right?
Yep. Yeah, for us,
I was gonna go ahead.
For our marketing and sales events, their thing is leads. And initially we were following what they were doing, but then we decided to not make leads our main focus for developer events. So it's been very nice to not have that
Yeah.
pressure, because it's like really hard to be like, hey, can I scan your badge? And you're trying to just have a conversation with people. So luckily we don't have, not right now for developer events. We don't have that.
What would be, so I'm curious then, what is the metric for success for those kind of sponsorships right now?
We're just looking for increase in like community participation. So we use Orbit to like track who's doing stuff in community, and if we get a list from the conference of like who attended the workshop, we'll put it in Orbit and now have like, raise their score saying they participated more with us. So that's what we're doing right now. Maybe next year after we've done a lot of events, they'll be like, okay, now we want the leads thing. But for now, it's more like just getting more people to use it. And we're trying to get the community to help the community, because I forgot about the support. And so I probably would change my answer to I want to get rid of the support instead of videos. Like our Slack, we have a Slack, and right now it definitely is Contentful people helping all the people. And we want more community people responding. So that we're hoping showing up at events, talking about Contentful will help with more community involvement.
Yeah. I mean, it's super interesting because I also think it's always a challenge of like what conferences are most successful, because like we're leaning away like at previous roles, like and I think this is also a sign of the times in market and whatnot. There were like, I don't care, even if it's remotely interested, go attend the conference. And like there was a lot of pressure for me to be at a lot of different things. Whereas like now I know we're taking a very more strategic approach. So I'm in a lot of like data science conferences or machine learning conferences, and particularly like open source machine learning conferences, which is like a totally different group of people. And I think that's like one of the most fascinating things about DevRel personally is like, I did come from e-commerce previously, even as a product manager. But like, it's kind of like the world, like the demographic developers have there are different types of developer stereotypes. Wow. That took a long time to get that out.
Mason has never heard of Orbit. Have you heard of Orbit, Erin?
The company, maybe once or twice, the year and a half that I worked there.
Yeah. So yeah, Orbit in Common Room, and there's different other tools.
Crowd.dev is one I've been really impressed with.
Yeah, for kind of tracking those metrics. One of our goals this year was to actually get one of those tools in place, but budgets being what they are nowadays, that changed. But on another note, completely not really DevRel related, but Henri is curious, and you don't have to answer this if you want, but he's given like you transition from WordPress to Contentful. Do you still use WordPress at all? And what are your feelings about WordPress now having moved on to Contentful? Are you doing like headless WordPress with Contentful or no?
I haven't used WordPress since 2019, I think is when I left the agency. I don't have any beef with WordPress, but I like headless more because you could do whatever you want. I haven't tried I haven't tried headless WordPress yet. It's kind of weird when I Google it. I don't really find that much, so I'm like confused about how popular it is. But I haven't used headless WordPress, and now that I'm at Contentful, I just use Contentful for stuff because it's just really easy. But yeah, I kind of want to try out WordPress to see what it's like now, because every time I do a workshop, I ask people. For a Contentful workshop, I ask people, have you used WordPress? Because it's a good intro to what Contentful is. And then I ask, do you like it? And people say no. So I want to go back to it and kind of remind myself what WordPress was like. But I don't hate it.
I haven't done WordPress in a long time either. I was on the fence about it.
Unfortunately, do actually. I have one project. I help maintain the NYU journalism website, which is a hacked together journalism WordPress template. It's like 4 different templates and 4 different versions of. It's like it is duct taped together, that thing, and I am just glad that it works and is enough for me to maintain it. And it is academia bureaucracies. They're not going off WordPress till WordPress burns down. So
Never going away.
yeah.
So, okay, so we have another question from the audience from Dev. He asked, what kind of value do different types of content bring to the company? Blog, videos, podcasts, conference talks, etc. So yeah, Brittany, what are your thoughts on that one?
I would say the content that works best for us are blogs and videos. Those are the things that get the most views and interactions. Like after we make it, the only thing with videos is that they become out of date really quickly. Like if we change our UI, then all of our videos are out of date all of a sudden. Like move a button and now, great, we have to redo. But I definitely think our blog posts are probably our most popular thing because it's easiest to search and find what you're looking for. I also think now that we're doing more conferences, another criteria when we choose what conferences to sponsor is if we can speak, and we really like doing workshops and getting people using Contentful for like an extended period of time. So even though it's like 50 people or less, we find that to be really valuable to getting people to actually use it and try it out and stuff. We had a podcast and I think they ended it like a year ago or something. So we haven't continued with that. I think we might want to start that back up, but we haven't moved forward with that yet.
Yeah.
What about you, Erin? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think I love Maddie too. She's commented like, how do you quantify it? So we are a company sponsor, an enterprise sponsored open source project. I forget so I'm on the open source side. I do zero enterprise stuff, which I love. I love getting to play in the open source world with academics. It depends. So we actually saw one of our biggest spikes we saw this year is I gave a talk and a demo at PyData Berlin. And that was actually one of our biggest spikes in not only website traffic, but new users on our platform. One thing we're actually thinking about for the second half of the year now is like we're in data labeling for machine learning. So it's very much like you are in the weeds in machine learning. Like you're not someone who's prompt engineering ChatGPT. You are building models or building really large data sets and working on the data science side. So we find like your typical quote unquote community things sometimes don't work. So we are very much open source driven. Slack engagement is there, but like 9 times out of 10, it's like discussing issues or very just get in, get out and get help. Workshops, super helpful. Short form videos, like walking through a video walking through a specific feature is super helpful. And content shared on Reddit is actually a huge driver of traffic for our site, which is something that was surprising to me. But we actually have gotten a lot of brand mentions in the Learn Machine Learning subreddit because we have an academic program that we partner with universities to give our enterprise software out for free to students or people doing academic research. And a lot of them are using our product for class projects. So wow. We actually see a lot of people going, help, I need help on my homework, blah, blah, blah. And they post it on Reddit, which is something that I didn't think we'd see that.
I'd say in my experience, it's been blogs have the longest life, because they don't, they just, they often drive a lot of traffic and if they're done well, they keep bringing traffic because you get SEO growth and stuff like that, just kind of build so that to me has always been the easiest one to justify because, even if it takes a lot of effort to make a blog post, like the lifespan is very long and the potential value of it is big. And videos, short videos, like Erin said, YouTube videos, but typically under 5 minutes, 5 minutes or less. Anything over, people seem to kind of abandon. Which is why CFE.dev, we always like doing hour-long shows. See, I'm doing it wrong, damn it. But and then the ones that's sometimes we struggle with justifying is that like the in-person conferences where we don't necessarily have a booth or anything, where we're just speaking. It's harder to find that, the value for the cost of sending you there, because of the things we talked about, you don't have control over when your session is, how many people are going to show up. So it can be like, and podcasts in streaming, like Twitch, for instance. I know it got big for like a lot of companies were trying to do it, but those ones I think it just takes too long and too much commitment to really make it pay off. Yeah. But I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe I'm just not charismatic for streaming.
I think a lot of it is like also how from a community like things, it's like for us, it's like we look at, Maddie talked about the different metrics. It's like we're definitely looking at like site traffic, new people like who signed up for the product, GitHub stars, new issues. Like, are we seeing people opening pull requests? Are we seeing people do that? But things like videos or Twitch or events, like they, in my opinion, and like in my experience, they can be super helpful, but it's like also building, you don't just like set it and forget it. Like you've actually got to go back and be like, okay, let's go turn this into a blog post. Let's go make this a tutorial. That's actually been my like latest cheater hack is I will live stream myself, even if it's like one person. Like if I'm about to do something or create a tutorial, I will live stream myself doing it. If 3 people show up, whatever. But then I walk through and then later, recycle it and be like, okay, I'm going to go take the transcription, turn that into a tutorial. Okay, where can I chunk this up into like a feature video that I can like, here's 2 minutes that I am walking through a feature. Okay, great. How else? And so it's like, how do you maximize that? It works really well for me because if you ask me to sit down, I will find a way to procrastinate sitting down and focusing on building it for 2 hours. But if I have to figure it out live and someone's yelling at me in the chat is perfecto.
That's a really good idea because I was just thinking about a project I wanted to work on that's not in Contentful and I wanted to put it in Contentful. But I was like, oh, this would make a really good live stream. But we don't do live streams anymore. But now maybe I'll try your idea where I can recycle it as a blog post or something.
So before we kind of as a final topic here, I did want to touch on, because we briefly touched on your work in the local community, developer community. Are you still active in the community? And what is this something Contentful kind of supports, or is it really something you do for your own thing? Share some of your experience about like kind of your working in the local developer community.
Yeah, for Women Who Code DC, because of COVID, Women Who Code had like a pause on in-person until May or March this year, one of those. So now they're just now starting out to allow in-person events for Women Who Code chapters. So for Women Who Code, waiting to see when we're going to start in person again. So definitely waiting for that. And also have like a little story of like how the Women Who Code, being Women Who Code, like reached outside of DC and coding and stuff. So we had our first in-person event. It was like a happy hour this year. And I went there and I met a woman who attended one of the meetups I taught when I was doing the bootcamp thing. And she's like, hey, remember me? And I was like, no. But she's like, I went to one of your things you taught like 3 years ago. And I was like, wow, you recognize me? That's crazy. And then I went to Render Conference in June, and a woman who was working there, staff, was at that meetup I had gone to before Women Who Code this year. And I was like, wow, normally I don't see people like connected like this. So I thought it was really cool how like just being part of Women Who Code connected me to these people. But yeah, hopefully Women Who Code starts doing in person again. We do some workshops and meetups, and like the biggest problem we have is finding a venue for places. So like hopefully Contentful can help with that, because we already have budget for helping local meetups. So like once we get that started, at least if we can't help with the venue, then at least paying for food and things like that. And then I also helped a lot of virtual ones. Like I did Front End Foxes only for one cohort though. I was a mentor. And then I also helped with G Code, which is another coding bootcamp for non-binary and people and women of color. And I was an instructor and a mentor for that, and that was really fun. I really liked it. And I've done a few other like mentor things. Like I did a bunch of coffee chats with the 100 devs when that was going on. And I really like doing these because I think it helps to hear somebody who had no tech background suddenly switch to tech and like it worked. So I think it helps a lot. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing for community stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of stuff.
I was gonna say, like, don't sell yourself short. That's like a lot. Also, other question, favorite musical. I feel like we have to ask that after all your time like talking about it earlier. And you can go different like categories if you need to.
Okay, I was about to say sometimes I have favorite musical for dancing, favorite musical for comedy. I think my favorite musical right now is two. One is Six, which is about the six wives of Henry VIII. They form a band and they have a competition, and whoever had the worst time with Henry gets to be the leader of the band. And then the whole show they're competing to see who had the worst time. So I really love that show. And then I also like Hadestown, which is the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. But it's set in like a Great Depression time on a train, and the music's like jazz folk music. So yeah, those are my two favorites right now.
Super cool. I'm glad to hear that you said yes. I've kind of, honestly, I'll admit it, I kind of dismiss Six because I get, usually if they're putting that much into advertising, I'm like, that can't be that good. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna take your cosign.
You're right there. You
yeah, I know. I should go. I go to all the other plays and whatnot, being in New York, but I really should go to. If Six is getting this high review, I think I might need to go to that.
Yep, I've seen it a few times now, and I think I might see it again. And they released it started in UK, so they have a UK album of the original UK cast, and then for the New York Broadway cast, they recorded it live opening night. So you have the audience and like the jokes, and like it feels like you're there listening to the album. So I've listened to that album like a million times because it's only 90 minutes long, so you can binge listen to it really easily.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of musicals, but I gotta check this out. This sounds good.
I was gonna say that, I was in when they reopened Book of Mormon on Broadway. We were in the show that they recorded it, and that was really cool because they also like updated some of the lyrics and stuff and like made new modern jokes and stuff. And the writers were there, so that was really cool. I'm a big fan of like comedy plays and musical.
Have you seen The Play That Goes Wrong?
I have. I haven't seen the new one. I've just seen like the original Play That Goes Wrong. I know that they're doing like, is it Peter Pan now as well? So, and that one's pretty good. It's pretty campy. There's also a musical about Star Wars, which is like personally one of my personal favorite off-Broadway musicals. That soundtrack is banging. So get your musicals on, folks. I can see we have another one for Hadestown in the chat. Rachel's talking about that.
It sounds like the two of you could geek out about musicals for a while here.
Yes, I know. I mean, I will say that I did get Sweeney Todd tickets, but I bought them like 6 months out because they were absolutely ridiculously priced.
I saw it.
Is it worth
amazing.
It?
Yes.
It's amazing. Okay, great. Cool.
Okay. So now that we're coming towards the end, Brittany, you may not know this, but every show we do a pickle fact because we're DevRelish, and because we like to play on words and stuff like that. I don't know.
We're the only developer relations content creators with pickle facts. So don't take our turf, people. This is our pickle fact turf. Like we have to be, that's our, what is it? What do they call that in product? Unique selling proposition. We are the only DevRelish content with pickle facts.
Only DevRel show focused on pickles as well. Something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maddie, for correcting my marketing terms. Wow, I butchered that 3 times.
So I'm going to turn it over to close us out to Erin for our pickle fact of the day.
I feel like we need to say it's very historical today. Napoleon was actually really here for the pickle power. He actually held a competition that gave up the equivalent of $250,000 as a prize to figure out who could best pickle and or preserve foods for his troops. So go Napoleon, researching all of his very unique pickling fun facts. We've had like a few historical ones. Cleopatra.
Yeah, I feel like they have like largely
America?
been historical. Yeah.
Yeah.
One episode we're just gonna have you break out your pickle. You're just gonna have to bring some of your pickling stuff that you have going on and show us.
Yeah, we'll do pickling. I did so this is a tangent. When I was at Orbit, they gave me crap for a while. We used to do a hobby swap. So everybody'd bring and share a hobby, and it was like, early team building. And I was like, oh, I grow and ferment things in my cabinets. And I made a whole slide about I titled it Cool Mold That Tastes Good. And then it's like, it's alive because it is live bacteria. And I was thinking I was so funny. And they jokingly told me that I killed Hobby Swap because we never did another one after that because no one wanted to listen about bacteria in your food at like 8 a.m. So yeah,
I can see that. Yeah,
they were like, Erin, you weirdo, telling everybody about your pickling and bacteria that tastes good at 8 a.m.
Yeah. Okay. It's a time and a place, I guess. You talk about bacteria that taste good late in the afternoon only.
Yeah. So only late afternoon pickling. Thing. I do have a fermented Bloody Mary mix. So for what?
All right. Well, that could be pickle fact for next month.
Yes. But thank you so much,
Brittany. You can actually bring your recipe.
Us. I'll bring my recipe. We'll do. Brittany, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it was really fun.
And if you want to plug anything or, plug yourself, plug what you're into, here's your moment, take the stage.
Yeah, my website's Musical Web Dev. Surprise, surprise. So if you want to check out my musical projects, check it out. There's a site called Theater Log, which shows all the shows I've ever seen. So hit me up if you're wanting, people definitely have messaged me which shows should they see if they're going to New York and I will help you. So yeah.
I am now going to hit you up. And if you're next time you're in New York, let me know because I will always look for more people to go to musicals with.
I'm going to be there in August. So
awesome. Yeah. And I think it's on your little handle there at Musical Web Dev. That's on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're on Mastodon, and I think I saw you on Blue Sky as well. You're everywhere, right?
Oh, I'm not on Blue Sky yet, I think.
You're not on Blue Sky. Okay. Do you want it? I mean, you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got invites. Like now that it used to be like everybody's begging for invites. And everybody's like, I've got invites. Anybody want? Yeah. Some people love it. I'm okay with it. It's fine.
I'm taking the Mastodon side of things. I mean, I'm just everywhere.
Yeah, me too.
Problem.
Yeah, we're gonna have a social media throwdown on one of these shows from a DevRel perspective.
Like, how many different how obnoxious are your notifications as a DevRel? Who has the most obnoxious notifications? Have you ever been limited that you're in too many DM Slacks?
Oh. Let's not get into Discords and Slacks. Oh my God. So, all right. Well, we'll let you go, Brittany. And thanks to everybody who came and everybody who stuck around for the whole thing. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking with you, Brittany. And as always, I enjoy talking with you, Erin. So we will be back next month. Look for an update on the site very soon about our next guest and date and time and so on. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Brittany. Bye, Erin.
Adios.